Joining me now is Dave Leventhal. He's a senior political reporter at the Center for Public Integrity. Dave, welcome to the Young Turks.
Hey, great to be with you.
Great to have you. So you guys have written about Joe Walsh recently. He's challenging President Trump in a Republican primary along with William Weld. Weld did not get a lot of press pickup, but Walsh has. And you guys have covered some of the interesting things about him. First, let's pause on why. Why do you think Walsh got a lot more coverage than William Weld did?
Well, first of all, Walsh is bombastic. He's a radio show host. He sort of has that media savvy that Bill Weld just kind of lacks. Bill Weld is not necessarily a compelling character in his current iteration, perhaps back in the 90s when he was governor of Massachusetts and he was conducting press conferences and jumping into rivers, which actually happened, then we might be talking a different story. But yeah, Joe Walsh really saw an opportunity here to make a splash, not to extend the metaphor, and really find a seam here in the Republican primary that nobody, Bill Weld included, has been able to occupy, which is a rabble rouser and somebody who is willing to say anything and almost do anything to oppose Donald Trump, not from a Democratic standpoint, but within the Republican Party in a primary setting where Donald Trump is just going to have to deal with him or ignore him at his own peril.
So, unfortunately, we reward bad behavior in this country these days because of the way that the media has evolved. And so, William Weld is a governor of Massachusetts, a very blue state. Governor is much bigger than Joe Walsh, is a one-term congressman. So theoretically, Weld should have a lot more credibility and be covered more. But Walsh, with his quote-unquote bombast, is a more interesting character. But Dave, what's the essence of that bombast? I mean, he has said things that are outrageous that are similar to Donald Trump. So where's the difference?
There's not necessarily going to be, and you talk about a difference, I mean, there's not necessarily going to be much there by virtue of the fact that Donald Trump remains wildly popular within the Republican Party. Now, Joe Walsh has made the case that that's a soft popularity, that there are people in the Republican Party who are yearning for a different option. If a real option is presented to them, they will leave Donald Trump, they will stop supporting Donald Trump. We don't have any evidence of that, at least at this point, and it's so early in the Joe Walsh campaign here, we have no sense of whether he's going to have any real support and certainly any real money, any real resources. He's been doing the rounds on all the television shows. He's definitely gotten a lot of press for just simply getting into the race in the manner that he has, but whether that translates into anything more than maybe a token percentage, 2 or 3 percentage points of support relative to where Donald Trump is at, which is almost universal Republican support, remains to be seen. And one would have to be dubious as to whether this is really going to amount to anything for Joe Walsh, who's a one-term congressman who hasn't served in Congress since the early part of this decade, who wasn't able to raise really a ton of money when he was running for Congress. And after he got beat, had run into quite a bit of trouble using racist terms on his radio show. He's had some personal financial issues that we got into in our story. So it's not as if he is a baggage-free candidate coming into this race.
So I literally don't know what his thesis is because it seems that he agrees with Trump on most of the issues and he says he needs to be more moral, but he's gotten in trouble for saying some of the same things that Trump has said. So seriously and literally, Dave, do you know how he's distinguishing himself and what makes him different than Trump and hence the point of his run?
He, in essence, has said that he has found religion, that his sins of the past are not applicable for the Joe Walsh of the present, and that he's somebody who has credibility in a way, and that he's been there, he's done that, and he is no longer that or doing that going forward. So, in a way, he's fashioning himself as very much the anti-Trump, even if he was somebody who, the day Donald Trump got elected, was saying, or I should say the day before Donald Trump got elected, that if Donald Trump didn't get elected, he was going to grab his musket and quite literally just go out and do everything he could to support Donald Trump. He's moved away from that very quickly over the past couple of years as Donald Trump has been President Trump as opposed to candidate Trump. And that's really where we've seen the transformation as it has been with Joe Walsh.
Yeah, well, the modern day equivalent of a musket is the AR-15, and a lot of people that support Trump have picked that up, and that didn't go well. So if Joe has learned from that, well, I'm happy to hear it. But that kind of incendiary talk was outrageous. He's also, at least in the past, was a conspiracy theorist and a racist one at that, like Trump, because he also believed in Obama's the birther theory, right?
Correct. And he, again, has made the case in the media rounds that he's been making that he no longer believes that was a mistake on his part. So it's not the best thing in the world if you're a presidential candidate having to start off your campaign with a whole series of mea culpas. But that's pretty much where we're at with Joe Walsh, whether he's able to get beyond that and convince any Republicans that he's somebody who is genuine in his transformation as he's presented it. Again, that too remains to be seen. But we'll have some polls. They will come out. We'll see if he makes any waves at all. But what we do know is that he doesn't have much of a campaign per se in a traditional way. He's kind of winging it. He's acknowledged that straight up. So if you're expecting that he's going to have operations in New Hampshire and Iowa and South Carolina and Nevada, the early caucus and primary states, don't expect that anytime soon. He doesn't have the money to do that. He doesn't have the resources to do that. There are no finances that seem to be on the horizon, although he's definitely doing his best to raise small dollar donations from people who would consider themselves to be conservatives or independent-minded Republicans who are willing to do something different than vote for Donald Trump in a primary.
You know what? The funny thing is, this conversation convinced me that he's right to enter the race. So let me run this thesis by you, Dave.
Sure.
So you don't enter the race because you think you're going to beat Donald Trump in the Republican primary. That's if things stay the same, that is inconceivable. But if Donald Trump, who is acting more and more erratic every single day and saying insane things at a dizzying rate, and the economy is on the brink of recession. If something were to go wrong and Trump was not in the race anymore, well, it would have helped you to be already in the race and have gotten a lot of attention as the guy challenging him. It would also help you to have said outrageous things in the past, because then you start your campaign with a giant media tour. Even if it's for a mea culpa, at least everybody has you on. And ground operation, Trump didn't have one either. So when you put all those things together, it might actually be a savvy move.
Now, the big difference is that Donald Trump is Donald Trump and has basically been a national figure for the better part of 3 decades. Joe Walsh is a relative unknown who, yes, is known in some certain quarters, but certainly not nationally in the way that Donald Trump is. But you make a good point. It's a situation where we know full well, especially given the past few years, that the one predictable thing in politics is the lack of predictability. Crazy things can happen, wild things can happen, things that you wouldn't have thought in a million years would happen, end up doing so in a relatively short period of time. That's not a prediction that anything of the sort is going to happen in the 2020 presidential race in the Republican primary specifically, but hey, Donald Trump has a way of being his own best friend and worst enemy at the same time. And we have so many variables that have yet to be solved for the economy, as you brought up, being a huge one. So say the economy, let's just play that game out. Say the economy turned incredibly sour. We went into a recession. All the things that Donald Trump loves to say about the stock market being great and job creation being through the roof, et cetera, et cetera. If that all went away, well, where might he be right around the time when people are beginning to cast their votes? Joe Walsh being on the scene at that point. If you're not in the game, you're nowhere. So the fact that he is in the game and potentially getting himself on some ballots puts him in a stature that other Republicans haven't got. Make no mistake, he's not Nikki Haley. He's not a sitting U.S. senator. He's not somebody who's run for president before. So he's got a huge mountain ahead of him to climb. But hey, getting in the race just in and of itself is something. And you got to pay attention to a person like that if they are saying things that at least some people are connecting with.
Yeah, Dave, I just realized this is an interview filled with epiphanies for me. What's going to happen? So I've been predicting from day one that Donald Trump is not going to finish his first term. He's just too stupid to be able to not create gigantic messes and not know how to get out. And he always bails. He declares bankruptcy, he finds an excuse, he cries, and he leaves. So I think, but I always thought like, well, I guess they're gonna have primaries after that, obviously. And then I realized, no, he's gonna probably leave at some point next year when a lot of the primaries are already over. And his last gift to the Republican Party in this country is going to be the giant mess of the Republican convention as they try to figure out what the hell to do when most of the primaries are gone, but so is the president. I have no idea what's gonna happen then, but that is gonna be a ride.
I mean, these scenarios are we've been thinking about them, year after year after year, and not just while Donald Trump has been running for president or been president, but in other iterations as well. What if it goes to the convention floor? What if there's no actual nominee? What if there is a tie? I mean, the most obvious thing that would happen in a Republican situation or a Republican context if Donald Trump was suddenly not able to become the nominee for 2020 at the convention is that Mike Pence would slide into it. That would be the conventional wisdom. But then again, something as chaotic as that could lead in any of a dozen and one different directions. So I would agree with you there.
Yeah, we got to go. But I'm now delighted at this idea because ain't no way the Republicans let Mike Pence just take it. They'll take out their knives. Ted Cruz will go to work. Mitt Romney will get into that mess. Nikki Haley will be there. Joe Walsh will be there. If he leaves after Super Tuesday, Trump does, it's going to be like, I never believed that the convention is ever going to be a mess. That's from like decades ago. It never happens. It's a fairy tale. But if the primaries already happened, then yes, the convention will be a giant disaster.
But a lot of people thought that a Trump presidency would be a fairy tale too, and here we are.
Yeah, that's right. All right, Dave Leventhal from Center for Republican Integrity. Thank you for joining us, appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure, thank you.
Like what you see? Click the subscribe button below and don't forget to ring the bell to never miss another video from the Young Turks.